I am a webinar coordinator for the network, and I'm joined today by Jessica Garska. Jessica is a PhD student at Trinity College, Dublin, and her research investigates curricula, assessment, and academic outcomes for international students in Ireland. Her research also incorporates global Englishes, and she's joining us today to tell us more about her research. So, Jessica, I'll turn it over to you. Do you want to start by introducing yourself and your research?
Sure. Hi, my name's Jessica. I'm over here in Ireland, trying to finish up my PhD. Um, so at the essence of my PhD, I guess it would be I'm interviewing and doing questionnaires with faculty and international students around Ireland. And I've also done a scoping review of pre-sessional curricula and assessment in empirical research. And I'm really looking at all of those kind of data points and trying to collate them, put them all together to inform an kind of an alternative pre-sessional curricula and assessment to see if we can have a better research-informed program for Ireland. So.
Oh, that's very interesting. Could you tell us a bit more about the Irish context? What's the current pre-sessional system like? How many international students or what types of international students come to Ireland?
So Ireland in the past 20 years has had huge growth in international students. So back in 2010, we had something like 5,000 international students in the Higher Education Authority and Institute of Technology. Now I think we have probably close to about 33,000.
So quite a big growth over the last 10 years.
Yeah, and we have a goal. We have an international strategy developed by our government, and I can't remember the exact figure of 2020, but I want to say it's around between that 33 to 44,000. So it's just even if I didn't get those statistics correct, it's just this huge growth. And with that, of course, there's also the ELT industry here, which streams into, they're really trying to stream it into higher education. So there's foundation programs and different things like this. And the ELT, the English language teaching sector, has about 100,000 students. So compared to the UK, it's still quite small. But for Ireland, it's just a completely new frontier. So pre-sessionals are starting to become more popular, but for example, Trinity College Dublin had our very first pre-sessional that was recognized by the university this past summer, and we had 33 students. Ooh. So they're still quite small, they're still developing, they're still we're still trying to find our feet. We have loads of professionals that are really experienced, highly intelligent, involved in research, and we're all kind of enthusiastic about developing this field, but it really still is in the baby stages, especially if you compare it to Australia, the US, the UK. It's still quite small.
But it seems like it's a growing area.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So how did you become interested in the topic of pre-sessional courses?
So my background is actually in science, and so I kind of fell into this. I started taking a master's at Trinity, and I was looking at power, identity, and culture in international students' academic writing. And then I kind of started looking, I was teaching as well, so I started looking at the programs and saying, hey, wait a minute. We're developing these pre-sessionals, but we're really kind of developing them as a silo. So we're quite isolated, and you might bring in kind of the research that you know about, but no one's actually doing formal research, talking to the students, doing an actual complete needs analysis in Ireland. So I said, okay, that needs to be done. If I'm going to be involved, I need to have some sort of research behind it. So.
Wow. And so it sounds like it's a massive, massive undertaking, and a nationwide needs analysis. Yeah. And so I think for this, you're incorporating a bit about global Englishes into your research. Is that right?
Yes.
Could you tell us more about how global Englishes enters into your research?
Yeah. So it's actually quite interesting because I'm including it really because it's coming up in interviews. So my theories are really being chosen because of the content in the interviews coming from the participants. And a lot of the faculty will talk about kind of needing to navigate between registers, between dialects. You have Irish English, you have so even the home students are having to negotiate all of these different types of Englishes. And also different languages. So I'm also bringing in translanguaging because of that. And then students are also really pointing out that when they come here, the Irish accent is quite difficult, and that most of their English language training has been either British or American pronunciation and listening activities, which is making commentary on the ELT industry. But because of all of these things, the need to really be able to navigate and fluidly go between so many different types of Englishes and contact with so many different types of people, that you can't ignore it. So I really want to be able to integrate that so that students are being able to be prepared for the reality of navigating global Englishes.
Right. If they come to Ireland, they're not getting, sort of this ELT industry boxed version of native English.
No.
Ground.
Yeah, and they have so much interaction with, people who are not from Ireland as well. Right. So that adds a whole nother layer as well. So
you mentioned translanguaging. Could you discuss that a bit and how that's feeding into your research?
Yeah, so I've kind of chosen translanguaging and academic literacies as kind of compatible theories that are really kind of at the heart. That's really because students are talking about their language practices, and they are talking about how they use different kind of strategies and using their languages, not even necessarily their native language, just any sort of language resource that they have, that right. They're using them anyway. And then I have the faculty, which actually is kind of surprising. The faculty is even describing trying to encourage these practices as well. So
that's surprising.
Yeah, so I had one faculty member, she was quite interesting. She actually said that when she's co-writing with her co-authors, and they'll be talking about how to phrase something, and a co-author will say, "Oh, I have a line from a book." And she's like, "Go away with those lines from the books. Tell me how you would say it in your language or your kind of cultural context, and we're going to use your turn of phrase, whatever it might be." So just the fact that these practices and kind of the view that language is more fluid is coming up in the data, again, you can't ignore it. And so I feel like that needs to be brought into the classroom if they're going to have to do that in, their masters. So.
And are you finding that it is being brought into the classroom, either through some sort of formal pedagogy or perhaps through informal practices related to the teacher or the student's awareness?
In presessionals or in universities?
In either, I suppose.
In presessionals, I would say definitely there's a shift towards it. There's definitely a shift away from this English-only kind of structure. So allowing students to kind of, switch between or kind of use different strategies, because it's not even switching between languages. And it's really just dependent on the teacher if they're kind of encouraging or discouraging it, but it's happening anyway. And in the university, I think you're kind of seeing more and more that they're being encouraged to use their linguistic resources in the classroom and in assignments. Just for example, there's an assignment that we did in our masters that you kind of go through your online language use. So you look at, say, WhatsApp or something, and you analyze your own language use. So there's a lot of students who are switching between so many different types of languages and registers and dialects, depending on who they're talking to. And that's being written about in their assignment. And so they might actually have different languages in their assignment, emojis and all this kind of stuff. So it is more and more being brought in.
That's very promising in terms of looking at innovative pedagogies that could be used in either EAP or ESP classes. It's reassuring to see that your finding is actually happening in your data. Could you tell us a bit more about how you collected your data? Looks like it's a massive countrywide project. So how did you go about contacting participants and even getting access?
So access is actually quite difficult. It's so basically what I did is I first just kind of released it around kind of my locale, so around Trinity, hanging up flyers, contacting the graduate students union, the students union, to contact faculty. I sent an email to all of the administrators in the school, and it was slow uptake. Just everyone's so busy and they have so much on their plate. So then I started looking to other universities, and again I was contacting deans or administrators or students unions and asking them to distribute the questionnaire and call for interviews. I also use social media quite a bit, and that was quite nice. It really engaged students. What I found was a lot of universities would come back and would have a couple of different answers. Either they'd happily pass it on, they'd say because of GDPR they're not allowed to pass on any not even forward. Yeah, they were like, I can't even forward your questionnaire. Or a couple of them asked me to go through their ethics application process, where I had to fill out a completely different form, go through that whole process again, passed it, and then they came back and was like, GDPR, sorry.
Oh,
So,
no.
yeah, so it was really hit or miss. It was quite hit or miss, yeah.
So how did you use social media then? That must have been a nice way to, I suppose, circumvent some of the bureaucratic structures that are in place there.
Yeah, so I shared on my personal page, which then meant that a lot of my friends would
Right.
reshare my post. I was allowed to contact societies or like clubs within universities. They usually have a social media presence where they post events or things like that on a Facebook page or a Twitter page. So I would just shoot them a message and say, this is my project, this is what I'm doing. Can you share this questionnaire? And quite a few of them did. So yeah.
Oh, well, congrats to you for getting all the data you did. It's never an easy process going through that, and it seems like you had a number of hurdles to get through. Just to wrap this up, do you have any advice that you would give to other PhD students or to people who are perhaps early in their research careers?
Um, Loads of advice. What can I say? Start writing early. It helps a lot, even if you change it. So even if you write your methodology in your first year, it's going to change, but it really does help kind of focus. So definitely start writing early and don't panic. Your project is going to change, it's going to evolve, there's going to be hurdles, and that's a kind of a natural part of the process, but it makes you a better researcher at the end. So if your project didn't change at all and you went through absolutely no problems, that would be quite rare. So
That's true, yeah, and sometimes the change isn't a bad thing. It just,
yeah,
it makes the project more rigorous as you go through these different obstacles.
exactly. Yeah.
Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to reading and seeing more of your research.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.